No
¡Y 5 de morder de Magnus Carlsen! ¡Cosa de locos!
En toda mi miserable vida, o sea, yo puedo volver a nacer 4 veces y nunca en mi vida voy a hacer esa jugada.
The chess we just witnessed today at the World Rapid Chess Championships Day 1 from the GOAT, the Cagness monster, Magnus Carlsen, was just out of this world. You're about to witness one of the most special moves and games we've seen in a while, and just an overall feast for the eyes. 5 Magnus games to come. I'm covering each and every one. Get comfortable. We're rattling off at a pace here, and we're starting with this. Game 1. He's playing the Italian Grandmaster, Lorenzo Lichi, a guy that knocked Hans Niemann out of the World Cup recently.
Chess spoke for itself.
So he's no slouch. We're going at a pace here. They get 15 minutes each, plus 10 seconds back per move. That's called increment, sometimes confused with excrement. And we see Magnus playing a solid Queen's Gambit declined. He means business. Half of Norway's watching him. We see a pawn cube on the board, aka the pube. Of course he shaves it. He's a top grandmaster. Don't hang your bishop. Queen takes look natural, but we see the knight stumbling backwards. Rook d1 eyes the lady, but she doesn't move. Magnus wins a pawn. Now she gets out of dodge, winning back the pawn here. This is how things proceeded, all been seen before, and now, after the knight jumps, bang! The ladies leave the board. Magnus fans are absolutely loving it here. They know what he can do in the end game. I can hear you screaming at me. It's a middle game still, you absolute plonker. Knight's defended, and the rook threatens to now take the bishop, and then land some nasty tactics, black winning. So Magnus backs up here, and now knight e4. Now, although white's barely got too much here in terms of an edge, it's just enough to confuse Lorenzo. g6 may be playable, then go e5, could even take, but he plays this one immediately, and Magnus unleashes tactics. Takes on a7. Now he's opening up this tension here, but let's ask the first and obvious question. Your knight was attacked, you were supposed to move it. So what if I execute on my threat? Well, now you take the bishop, but hang on a minute. What about rook a8? Surely winning a piece. Well, now there's this. Yes, you win that piece, but I win this piece. Now we can't go down every single line, right? But this was a playable one for black. But again, Magnus emerges a bit ahead. Pressure, 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 as you can see. Not fun. Just one sample line, right, of if you take the knight. So in the game, Lorenzo goes, okay, I'll take the bishop first, then your knight moves, now I'll attack this one. And after you get out the way, then I'll win the pawn. But no, we see Magnus invade, defending and attacking. And just like that, he's a pawn to the good. Before you can say, show me your best chess outfit.
Yours is also good.
We do have to wonder, has international arbiter Chris Bird brought his umbrella with him? Only time will tell. Rook's attacked, Magnus has gained the space over there, and he now trades off all the rooks and goes for this endgame. He defends before chopping off the b-pawn, and he just works his magic. Because he's got the outside passer, he distracts lots of pieces and the king. Then he switcheroos, swings round like this. We're going to keep it rolling, keep it rocking. Always take on croissant when you're playing Magnus Carlsen. Bellow it in your best French accent if you play Magnus Carlsen. And in this position, we saw resign simply. It's now nearly +5. g5 check is coming. This avalanche of pawns is running. And the moment you try and deal with these, this one can run this way, kick away the knight, run the a-pawn. Let's pause there. He takes it home, Go to game 2. He's playing David Paravian, a very, very strong blitz player, by the way. Always does pretty well in Title Tuesday. And we get this wild Sicilian here. Magnus looks like he's absolutely pinned down. So many pieces stuck on the Etienne back row. David whispers, stack my bishops, gains loads of space over there. Magnus strikes back in the centre, but his king's still stuck in the middle, and it just gets messy now. Because he wins a pawn, we see takes, but not bishop recaptures. We see takes here. Now we see takes here. You know, bishop takes there was possible. We'll just stick with the game, stick with the current craziness. Now we see check to ruin the castling rights. Then the queen takes. After all of that, black ruins the white castling rights and white emerges a little ahead, which we can definitely understand. Because although black's a pawn ahead, look at the pieces. Way more stuck. Look at this monster minor piece here. Don't take there. Open tons of lines. You're really not helping yourself. So Magnus plays rook e8. Good move. Now, why not shatter the pawns, right? Well, long story short, you're actually giving up an amazing minor piece. Black instantly gets counterplay. This one can cover the king if needed after the pawn's taken. And black unravels and is right back in it, even a smidge better. So instead, we get knight b6 check. So understandable. Why not take the rook in the corner? Again, it's just a different game. Apparently it equalizes, right? You can kind of understand because this guy is a bit of a monster. Unassailable on that e5 square. Solid pawn structure over here. Magnus can try and probe this king, but it should be roughly level. c3 is bad, by the way. You allow d5. There are better moves than that. Anyway, let's crack on. Because we didn't see the exchange captured. We saw pawn c3. Bishop g5. Incredible move by Magnus and probably missed when c3 was played. Because if you go here to try and stay with the knight, then bang, you run into f5. Center is collapsing. So the bishop's taken, king takes knight, and just like that, Magnus has wormed his way out of the pressure. Queen takes could have been played, just a different line. This was the game. Now we see the rook pressuring down here, so Magnus covers. What a white rook that is. Defending, attacking, doing so many jobs. How's Magnus wiggling out of this? Well, he lands an important check. If the king steps back, fine, then the rooks double up. So we saw the explosive c4. Queen e5 offers the exchange. If takes, then this. Black's now standing better, marginally, not played. This rook hit the f-file here, and it gives a pawn. Bang. Magnus snatches it. He's feeling hungry. And now, white could take here. Black brings the rook. World keeps spinning. But this one was played, looking to rip open that black king. It's also good, but Magnus finds the incredible defensive resource. Rook d8, you know, he's walking this tightrope. He's just got it covered 3 times, but we get pawn to c ships. And if takes, then queen a7 check, and you're losing pieces. So we see instead d5, and it's David Paravian that goes wrong here. Blinks first. He should glide on by with e5, even though it gives a pawn, but then white takes here. Game goes on. But he takes on d5. And as you can see, Stockfish absolutely poops its pants because check, king goes, check, king goes, and there's a mate in 1. Whack, Magnus lands it on the b5 square. That is one dead king in the middle of the board. Let's go to game 3. The Spankerson spanking just gets better. Another Queen's Gambit here, or kind of thing, right? Nimzo Indian E. And the black position, after about 8 moves, Magnus with the centre is horrible. Look at this. That is some stinky cheese, and not in the good Christmas festive-y stinky cheese way. Just horrible, close the window, what a pong way. This knight now drops back, Magnus with the centre, And he just gets, who is this, sorry? Eduardo Bonelli. Vaguely heard of him. Steamrolled. Absolutely steamrolled. Watch this. Magnus with all the pawns rumbling, every piece playing, 4 minor pieces on the board, horribly passive position, kind of shaven Indian pawn structure. Magnus expands now, black fighting back, but this is just not going to cut the mustard. Magnus gives the central pawn, but he's obviously won the D pawn, and look at the square he's got for the knight. Now this just picks up a tempo, but pushes the queen to an active square, and it's so hard to cover everything. The bishop backs up to cover. What if you go rook b8, try and protect this pawn? Well, then the problems come in a different way. Okay, I thought I had this line prepared. Apparently not. Okay, bishop g3 opens this threat. Bishop e8, and then d7. And the bishop's overloaded, right? Can't do both jobs. Fine. One sample line here. Also, there's this. None of it's working. So bishop e8 was tried. Now the knight takes, queen goes, knight backing up, lovely seahorse. Magnus loses that pawn, but look what he wins instead. He's got 2 connected passes on the queen side. Now he doesn't play this in the most precise manner, but it's good enough. We see some pieces going into the blender. You can't take on a4. At the end of all that stuff, you get branked. That's back ranked, checkmated. So h6 was played to give a bit of Lufthansa. There go the pawns. Rook d8, maybe hinting at a bit of this. Magnus centralizes. This is how things proceeded here. Don't take the queens off. Eduardo knows. Knight defended. And now it's desperado time. Bishop takes on b5. Giving a piece for 2 pawns because they were so powerful and saying, okay, I'm going for this. And Magnus allows black to try and create the fortress. Now he famously said, this is Magnus Carlsen, there's no such thing as a fortress in chess. Someone once did an article, Magnus playing in the sand there, looking like a midget with a massive head. Apparently takes was better, by the way, but okay, human chess, not played. Hang on a minute, why not take this pawn? Not played, back cave mode. This is the refutation. Queen hits this rook now, and you're crashing through here. If you try and cover like this, that's a checkmate in 1. Or you do it from there if you're feeling frisky. So we back it up here. Rook a5 check played. Magnus goes on this big king march. Rook gives ground, and there's a very instructive line coming. Because now that the king is in contact with the e6 square, there's a problem. This is how the game went. Check, king here, queen c4, and we saw resigns. Because if you try and put this rook anywhere on the e-file on the dark squares, you're going to ultimately get checked and lose the rook. You know, somewhere, something or other. Can't go here, can't go here. So what if you go to e6, hold the fortress? This is the instructive point. Now that the king's in contact with the square as well, you march in, and black just can't hold the pawn. You always take the opposition, march 1 through, and then just do your best to checkmate and not stalemate the king. Let's go. 4th game. This is the most beautiful of the day, in my humble opinion here. This is where Magnus showed he's just on another level. By the way, Nimzo Larsen defense here, or opening. I have been endlessly practicing this opening for like 55 days now on Lotus Chess. Hit my streak there. It's the only app I use to learn openings. The link is in the description. Make that push at the end of this year, starting into next year. They may even have a sale on right now. I'm trying to recall. It's late here, Boxing Day. But it's just incredible, free to get started, and then probably on at a good price right now if you sign up for it. Check it out below. This is the Nimzo Larsen, where you stick the bishop on the b2 square, and it just gets better because both players tuck those bishops into bed there. Full bishops crossing swords on the board, and this is just something else because after the pawns defended, castles, knight bd7, white should nibble away at that structure that Magnus has set up. An immediate c4. maybe even a4. But this is played. And Magnus spots the subtle issue with this move, because now when the explosive c4 is played, this knight does not sit on f3, is not covering the e5 square. This one remains undeveloped. And so he plays the absolutely wild response, a move that GM Pepe said he wouldn't find in 4 lifetimes. Whether I played that correct clip, no clue, but I heard Quattros, assumed 4. Magnus plays pawn e5.
¡Y 5 de morder de Magnus Carlsen! ¡Cosa de locos!
En toda mi miserable vida, o sea, yo puedo volver a nacer 4 veces y nunca en mi vida voy a hacer esa jugada.
Recognizing that the knight's gone, recognizing that although he is sacrificing a pawn here, there it goes, that's a gambit, this is an outside running a pawn now for white, he's exploding in the center of the board and generating this huge counterplay. Now we definitely have to ask the question, what if white plays the best move, which is pawn e3? The lines here are nuts, because best is to expand through the center of the board, give up another pawn, white's 2 pawns ahead, and then make tactical use of the fact that the white pieces are not properly developed. This is the absolute top line. And this isn't like, oh, play this top line, but if you don't worry, there are second moves that are just as good. This is like, no, only moves. If you don't find this line, you're just lost. So would Magnus have found all this? Honestly, I got no clue. Just incredible if he would have done. This was some stuff I was clicking down. Check. Knight's running in. And this just remains an ongoing problem. And all of this stuff. Queen's now hit. Say you try and stay with the knight, right? Then you hit the queen again. Say you try and stay with the knight. Then there's this. I mean, this is a checkmate. As you can see, I've been clicking. It's just insane, the lines that ensue after pawn e3. Magnus does this though. Sorry, not Magnus, David. Now we see this. Queen kicked from pillar to post, and then the explosive d4. Not normally what we say it for, but it's explosive here. And you can see why the knight's bad there, not having played e3. It's getting discombobulated. And Magnus is getting that huge centre almost for free. Knight's defended. Now we see this knight rotate around. This is a better square. Not played. This move on the board. And he's just ripping everything open. The queens do leave here, which stops you immediately losing a piece. You could chuck in a check. This is how things went though. Bishop backs up and f5 of course. You can't come to c3 and defend this pawn. So knight here. It's just horrible now. Magnus has restored material and then some. Rook d1. d3 anyway. Knight's pinned of course. So we see rook b1 heading off the attack. d2. Bishop's about to drop. King f1. Rook covers its other. And we see resigns. Because the bishop is getting munched. Has no squares. Absolutely dominated. Where to go? I mean, this is honestly something else. How he finds these games to a sample line. Really, really special game. Unbelievable. Let's run to the fifth and final game against Arjun Erigaisi. Now, this is a serious, serious opponent. The other guys are, of course, fantastic. Another pube, love it, shaved. But this is different gravy. This is Arjun, top 5 in the world, maybe. Top 10, definitely, maybe top 5. Forget all the details. And you can see it here. Because Arjun shows his class, shows his quality, and does indeed equalise the game, or pretty much right. We enter this end game here, where Magnus stands a little better, but not much in it. We've got the isolated queen's pawn for black. You must learn to play with it, unless you're a complete wuss. Now we see this queen harassing the rook there. Finally, long story short, Magnus wins the central pawn because Arjun gives it up, but he gets an active rook. What can Magnus do here? We know he's going to massage. Not literally. On the board, of course. Arbiters don't love it if you actually start doing the real moves when someone's trying to concentrate. He gets these going. Lovely bathtub. Sits the king in there. Get nice and clean. And soon, that one goes on an excursion. Arjun doing everything right here. Waiting, waiting. Now we see it. White king on its way. There we go. G-pawn attacked, but abandoned. Poor person. F4. King F8. This is an only move, by the way. If you don't go King F8, if you do anything else, like Rook G4, you lose. King steps in. That is just game over. Arjun knows it. Incredible defense. Understanding he can walk into a new pin and not be lost. What's the response here? King E7. Hitting the rook. Magnus takes. If you take my rook, I make a queen. This is just outstanding chess from both players. Rook takes. Take my pawn, I take your rook. Take my rook, I take with the king and you're dead lost. Therefore, this is one of the only moves. Rook G4 also. Magnus could take, but he steps here. He wants to sort of invert the move order and take with the rook instead of the king. Get the rook, king to the F file. And unbelievably, Magnus is 2 pawns ahead here, but it's a theoretically drawn position if you can prove it. I mean, hands up if you're drawing this right. Rook swings around. Can Arjun do it? Limited time on the clock, of course. And Magnus is going to squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. We know it. Who wouldn't? He wants to go clear top. 5 out of 5 on day one. What's going to happen here? These pawns soon start running. And then you have to show your mettle. Prove your worth as a chess player. Many eyes on this game now. It's running deep, deep, deep into overtime here. Late in the day. Late in day one of the tournament. Here come the pawns and the king marching. Magnus gives one to start advancing one. It runs round. Arjun does it. He holds on. He makes the draw. They agreed it here. Why? No progress can be made. If you try and march round and then try and run the pawn, well, the king steps in. You just can't really stop it. One quick sample line. Otherwise, black's just going to check you forever. That's how it ended. Let's have a quick look at the standings. We've got Magnus on top, Arjun 2, MVL, Artemiev. No huge surprises. Gukesh having a good one. He struggles sometimes in shorter time controls. Blitz is where he might struggle most, but he's doing great here. And then a few following, right? Anish up there. Couple of IMs, but let's be honest, right? These guys that get good online and all that stuff, they're way stronger than their actual ratings suggest. Hope you enjoyed this marathon of Magnus games. Thanks a lot for watching. Check out Lotus Chess, link below, and have a look at the video on screen if you want some more epic chess. Cheers.